Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Welcome into the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, here with Keith Myers. Keith, we're talking Seahawks football. Welcome into the show. Let's get it going.
Yeah, so we're back to morning recordings now because we are on summer, and I officially do not have to go live in that building where I work at. So we're back to morning recordings, and I'm all for it. So I got my coffee, and we're going to talk some Seahawk football, and it makes for a great day.
Yeah. It's always good to be here, especially this week. It's just been kind of hectic. And so it is nice to come in and have this to look forward to first thing in the morning, and drinking coffee instead of another choice beverage. We'll have to swing in that direction for a little while, and then we'll go back in the fall, I presume. So this week we're taking a look at some mini camp stuff, get you up to date on current news, contract negotiations, demands out there. I think there's one player transaction so far, but our primary focus this week is going to be looking at minicamp, and this week is the offensive side of the ball. Next week we'll come back, we'll do the same show on the defense, and this week is 5 storylines to pay attention to out of minicamp as we head towards the full training camp. I think it's the 1st of July or not the 1st of July, the 1st of August, or the last day or two of July is when training camp starts officially.
I was thinking that the first of the reporting day was July 29th, but there's no practice that day. That's just reporting and physicals and that kind of stuff. So
yeah. There's a couple of transactions. One of the guys I was actually going to talk about today, not very much, but he was in the group that I was going to talk about, is B.J. Evans. He's an undrafted rookie free agent running back that the team signed shortly after the draft, and he was waived today. Team made an adjustment on the roster by signing a tight end, Dominic Wood Anderson, who was on the roster before cuts last year, and he's just back to compete. Get some more reps at the tight end position. I'm not sure if they'll add another running back or not to that group. And then we were going to talk about a couple of contract situations before we got into the main deal. First, the easy one, maybe Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown's, I think he saw Forsyth drafted, and he's up there. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and maybe looking for a little bit more security. Has asked to be able to negotiate a new contract extension. Mm-hmm. Nobody kind of knows exactly where that would be as far as compensation or how long something like that would last. So this kind of gets into strategy a little bit, like Seahawks strategy, like, how long do you want to employ Dwayne Brown? How long is he employable, based on his age, and so far that hasn't seemed to diminish his quality of play. But at some point that dial is going to start to get turned a little bit. And so, Keith, you're the offensive line kind of guy, strategically wise. How long do you want to keep Dwayne Brown and not develop anybody else really behind him?
Well, it's not a matter of not developing. You can continue to develop people behind him. And Forsyth is a guy that's worth developing, but he's also not ready to step in and play at this point. So I wouldn't have a problem with extending Dwayne Brown for a year or two. I wouldn't go beyond that just because of the problems with age. But look around the league at guys like Trent Williams and Andrew Whitworth and some of the left tackles that are technicians, which he is. They age pretty well. Now the people that make their living by being a mauler, they don't age as well, but the technicians do. And so I would be okay with extending him for a year or two, especially when you look at You can move Forsyth over to the right side where Shell's also in the last year of his contract and let him develop there. If Dwayne Brown ends up playing, for a couple of other years. So it would work out fine to do things in that way. So I'm for it. It comes down to money for me.
So what do you think that he's
jumper,
thinking? And what do you think the Seahawks were thinking before this demand came out? Like, were they going to think, well, let's let him play out his contract and see where we're at next spring? Or do you think that they were thinking extension possibly anyway as a strategy to kind of keep the continuity on the offensive line?
Well, the fact that they didn't do anything with his contract when they needed cap space tells me that they were envisioning letting this play out and then dealing with it next offseason, or at least dealing with it in the middle of the season once they kind of had a better read on the Russell Wilson situation. Because if Russell Wilson ends up, if this year goes poorly and he demands out at the end of the year before next year, they would trade assets and go into a rebuild, one of which would be Dwayne Brown. But if they can, if everything works out and Russ is going to be around for a while, they're going to want to keep this team in contention, and you keep it in contention by keeping your star players like Dwayne Brown there, and you extend him out a little bit. And yeah, he's getting a little older, but you're just trying to keep that window open.
How do other contracts come into play when you're dealing with this extension and then possibly some other things going on that would affect the available money? And then what, how Pete and John like to do things in a certain order to make sure that they're taking care of the right people the right way at the right time and so forth. So how does this maybe impact Jamal Adams?
It shouldn't at all.
Where does that money come from? I mean, are you thinking initial year cap savings, or does that really come into play?
I mean, it can. We're also after June 1st. And so then, things can be spread out over multiple years now, if the team chooses to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, you can kind of go in and massage the cap in a way that makes it work both this year and the following year. So I'm not concerned about that unless the numbers come out to be huge. But if the numbers come out to be huge, if Adams ends up asking for quarterback money, and they decide to give it to him, well, that's different. But I don't think they're gonna do that. They're going to do half quarterback money, and have him be in the $16 million, 15 to 17. We'll just go that million a year range, and that's fine. They can make that work pretty easily. Dwayne Brown's going to be slightly less than that, I think, and that might be one of the things that they look at is, okay, with Brown, they can actually maybe talk him into taking less and earning less over the next 2 or 3 years, but guarantee more of it.
Right.
And
which is really important at this stage of his career.
Yeah. And so they can really make that work. And I it's in his best interest to do this and say it now and try and get it done now. Because if he goes out at his age and plays another year, and especially if he gets hurt and whatever, he may never get another payday. So he's in a position right now to ask for it. The team's kind of in a position right now where they can give it to him and it'll be okay. They really should. And just go make that happen. And that was actually one of the storylines that we were going to get into, that I was going to bring up, is what happens with Dwayne Brown, because is this going to become something that kind of drifts into training camp and becomes a problem? Or if it does drift into training camp, maybe Forsyth gets a lot more reps a lot sooner. And if he comes out and looks good, then they go, well, maybe we don't need to pay Dwayne Brown, and things can happen that way. But
yeah, no, let's talk about it. I mean, let's start there, and one of mine was just the offensive line in general as well. So we can kind of have that conversation. Mine was the new look, old look offensive line with new running game coordinator, Andy Dickerson. Mm-hmm. And then I talked about the new additions, Gabe Jackson, moving Damian Lewis over to left guard. I can account as some sort of, move, adding Stone Forsythe. We've mentioned a couple undrafted guys, Dwayne Brown's contract extension. So there's some moving parts there. It's pretty good though for this time of the offseason. This is pretty common and within the margins of to be expected. But it is going to be important because it seemed like the team. So when you take a look at the whole Shane Waldron edition and Andy Dickerson and so forth, they have a certain scheme that they bring in. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the offensive line scheme, but it does help that certain athletic attributes kind of come into play on the offensive line that maybe didn't exist prior to this year. But the team it seemed like they elected to stay with the same athletic guys that were there. So that my question is, does this scheme and this offensive line transition all fit together? And if it doesn't, could that create major hiccups and issues for like Russell Wilson and the running backs and so forth? Or if it really works, could this offense just be completely unstoppable?
Well, I think if you look at the athletic profiles and the scheme and what you need to run this zone stretch, outside zone running game that we've all kind of assumed is coming in because they've talked about it, and that's what they put together with the Rams before coming here. That's actually a better fit for the players that they've got than
Are there
what
any
they
exceptions
were last year. Damian Lewis might be the one that's kind of the exception, but he's athletic enough and
young enough.
I don't have any concerns, but honestly, Dwayne Brown played in an outside zone running scheme his entire career before he came to Seattle and switched to an inside zone scheme. He knows it. He probably knows it better than he knows, the old offense, because he played it from his rookie year until he, got traded to Seattle. Shell, his, the way he moves and everything, he's great for it. Gabe Jackson, that's like a perfect fit for him and his athletic profile. And I honestly, for Ethan Posick at center, he's a much better fit for that than he ever was for an inside zone scheme. So
that is absolutely true.
And so I'm actually encouraged by the change in scheme because I think it fits the talent better than what the old running scheme did. And so it's actually a better fit overall.
Cool. So that was my second overall line item to talk about today. My fifth one, I'll start my list. My fifth storyline to watch is the running back group, and specifically Rashad Penny. So I wrote in my title, Rashad Penny leads a group of young backs to compete for carries and throws out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because it's, as much as we talk or not talk about Rashad Penny, it seems like he's kind of an afterthought just because of the injury situation that he has and the unproven ability to stay on the field. Now, when he's on there, an impact is evident, and the potential is there, but it remains to be seen if he is the second running back, out of this group, and can he stay healthy, or if he starts out as the second running back, can he keep that spot? Because you've got Alex Collins waiting and DJ Dallas, and they've got Josh Johnson now on the quote unquote 90-man roster, and we'll see what happens there. But there's not a lot of depth there. I thought it was kind of going to be okay, and it will be if nobody gets hurt. I think Chris Carson and Rashad Penny is a fine tandem up at the top, and then if Alex Collins makes the roster, I feel really comfortable there with another back that can run between the tackles. And then after that, DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, they need to step up and kind of establish themselves as having that ability to kind of back up Rashad Penny and catch the ball out of the backfield and just kind of be a change of pace guy that comes in for 4 or 5 plays a game or whatever.
Alex Collins showed last year that he still has some ability, and we saw when he left Seattle the first time and went to Baltimore and ended up, because of injury, as the feature back there for over half a season and had a great year.
Yeah.
So the abilities, and by the way, they were running an outside zone running game in Baltimore at that time, so we know that it fits for his style. I like him as the third back. He's there kind of as the insurance policy for Penny and Carson, who are both injury prone guys. So I actually think he has a good shot to make the roster as that we'll call him the fourth running back because, you have the top two, and then you got the pass catching specialist, which is probably going to end up being DJ Dallas. And then, and then you've got Collins there, who's just kind of the insurance policy for everyone. So to me, I like the group. I do worry about the lack of depth there. I'd love to see another body be available. It doesn't need to be someone that is
a journeyman guy would be good. And the only reason for that, Keith, too, is it's just the sheer commitment from Pete Carroll that the running game is going to be featured. It's going to be important. It's going to help, the passing game. It's going to work in conjecture. We all know that. And so when you have a roster, though, that's dependent on two guys at the top, that's somewhat injury prone. I mean, those guys, can go anywhere from, say, 10 games available to 14 games. But Chris is going to miss a couple games. Rashad Penny's shown he's going to miss a few games. And then you're depending on a guy like Alex Collin or DJ Dallas to carry the load on certain weeks. And, you don't want to have to pencil those in as losses just because you can't run the ball.
Yeah. And I don't think you would pencil those in as losses. The passing game is going to be too efficient to automatically do that. But I'd like to see, and the thing is, it doesn't even have to happen right away, but they're having some sort of available journeyman guy that can come in and
like a Frank Gore level running back, a guy that can give you 75 catches on the season for, attempts. 75. Yeah. For
75 rushing attempts.
Yeah. Rushing attempts for 250, 300 yards would be just fine.
Yeah, and like I said, that doesn't even have to happen now. That can be in training camp if one of our running backs, has a minor injury and you're okay, well, they're going to be out for a couple of weeks and whatnot. You can bring someone in to pick up some reps in practice and have them make the roster, and so you end up having just that depth that's there, that's just available, even if best case scenario is you never use it.
All right, what do you want to bring up?
Well, the running backs was one of mine too. Really, like for me, I thought of this as this is either going to be my top story or it's my bottom story, right? And that's going to be the Russell Wilson saga and what happens with that. Are there any signs of carryover from the drama and stuff early in the offseason, or is it just over? If there is signs and it's like, contentious and a problem, well, then that's the number one problem and story in Seattle. But if it's not, if everything is all happy, which it appears to be, I don't know if you saw Russell Wilson interrupting Pete Carroll's press conference, put his arm around him and said, "Hey, we're still friends." And it was all like everyone was laughing and it was funny. If that is the way things really are, then it's a non-story.
Yeah. Well, I took it two different ways because I had it the same way, Keith. I put it as my number one topic because it can go both ways, and either way it goes, it's still the number one topic. I put my title as being the resurgence of Russell Wilson and the potential league MVP. So that was my approach, but you could have it go the other way in the opposite extreme and being a complete distraction, so much so that this experiment doesn't work. And, he's gone next year. So for me, I took the angle of the complete upside, because if it is what they say it is now, it's difficult because a lot of people are skeptical about what is being said by either Pete Carroll or Russell Wilson on this issue, because there was so much secrecy and they kept quiet for so long, and now they kind of seem like they're covering their tracks. Well, for me, and you and I, we kind of both read the situation from the very beginning in the way that it ended up unfolding, right? And so for me, when they talk about all this stuff together, Pete comes out and says, "Hey, this is, it was overblown. This was kind of an media thing. Russ and I have remained in contact. Everything's great." Russ comes out, essentially says the same thing. I believe them because I do believe that it's true. And I think it plays out in the way that they the relationship they have that's public facing that everyone sees and the product on the field. I think that those two things line up. They're not disassociated. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this is a huge opportunity and Shane Waldron's another one of my storylines to follow. Paired with Russell Wilson, I think this puts Russ in a position to have his most effective season as a pro.
So should we talk about Shane Waldron? Because
let's skip the list and let's just do the free form show.
Because that's the number one storyline on mine is what's this new offense look like? Give me some more of the details. Tyler Lockett came out I think it was yesterday, and said that the offense is nothing like it was. It's more dynamic. It's quick hitting. It's going to confuse other opposing teams. There's a lot of misdirection and motion and everything. He's excited. He's like, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
What's it look like? I mean, we have these.
I'll tell you what it looks like based on just using stats.
I'll say we've had assumptions that we've made that it's going to be very similar to what the Rams did the last couple of years, because Waldron was the passing game coordinator. And they also brought the offensive line or assistant offensive line coach. He's now the run game coordinator in Seattle. So they're bringing in the coordinators to
recreate it. Yeah.
To recreate it. But Waldron also wasn't calling plays. Right. And so, we have that because McVay was calling the plays. And so, okay, is it going to be slightly different because it's now Waldron's thing and not?
Well, you have a different quarterback with different ability too.
Well, you have a quarterback with ability.
Yeah. Well, here's the one key stat that the entire thing hinges on, that you can build a story around the entire thing from just this one thing. Last year, the Rams wide receiver total yards, half of them came from yards after catch. In Seattle, that was 1/3 of the yards came after catch. So what's going to happen is Shane Waldron's going to use the talent that we have. And we've always talked about this. He's going to use the talent that we have to create open space in defenses to take advantage of the athletic and skill position speed that we have at those positions to create mismatches. And it's going to be wild because the ball is going to come out a lot quicker. So what this tells me, though, that stat tells me, is that we talked about the up tempo and space, the wide zone, West Coast timing. Everything's going to be timing wise now. Is you're going to hear that word more. Everything's going to be just quick hit, get the ball out in space and allow your wide receivers to create opportunities to move the ball.
Not everything is going to be quick.
No.
Some of it's
not everything, but you're going to be, the base of that system is on timing and tempo. Yeah. And that will then, when you then make everything look the same coming off the line of scrimmage, defensive backs aren't going to know if it's like a quick hitting timing thing or if they're going to run this like long developing over the top throw to DK Metcalf. It's all going to kind of look the same when it comes out.
The Rams have led the league the last 2 years in rollouts by their quarterbacks. So they're going to put Russell Wilson on.
So they're going to move the pocket.
They're going to move the pocket. They're going to put Russell Wilson on the
to me,
edge.
That's exciting.
And they're going to force defenses to commit, because if you've got a linebacker who sees Russell Wilson rolling out, they have a choice to make. Do they stay back in their zone, or do they commit to coming up and stop Russell from picking up the first down with his feet? But if they come up, now you've got a hole that can be exploited.
And you've got 3 tight ends that are really good at possibly creating that open space too.
Well, and you have one of the best quarterbacks at throwing on the run in the entire league. You got one of the best deep ball throwers in the entire league, and you get him out on the edge, and that allows for deeper routes to develop and get out there. Wilson can buy a little time rolling out and then hit DK Metcalf or Lockett for huge gains. Like, I think it's going to be hard on opposing defenses because a lot of that will come off of what will look like an outside zone run. And then Wilson will peel back. And it's going to look the same. From the same formation with the same personnel, you can make an outside zone run. You can have a play action and have him peel off the backside and hit a long pass. Or he could just drop straight back and hit something really quick over the middle or that kind of stuff. It's just a much more... from the same formation and personnel standpoint, they're going to do a lot more stuff. They're not telegraphing what they did.
If you're a defensive coordinator and you're trying to, you're not going to prevent, but you're going to try to limit Seattle's offense. So do you stay in base defense by default and play everything vanilla and play it to the best of your ability and allow your speed on defense to kind of help mitigate? Or do you take chances against a Seattle offense like this, knowing that you're going to hit on some of those chances, but you're also exposing yourself? And I don't mean that in a dirty way.
Stop exposing
Sorry
yourself.
about that, moms out there.
No, for that, what I
mean exposure as far as
I know
liability.
Yeah. I think what you're staying in base defense and going vanilla is setting yourself up to get beat. Because you're there and you're like, you can cover everything kind of, but you're not great against anything. I think what you're going to see a lot more is a lot of nickel, or 3 safety nickel. The teams are going to try and get more speed on the field, more speed on the outside to cover if Wilson does peel back on those rollouts, in those bootlegs, more speed, on the outside so you can cover the DK Metcalfs, as if you can cover DK Metcalf. And so they're going to do that. But what that's going to do when teams are in these smaller, faster, personnel groups is, okay, you do that, we're going to run against you. And you're going to see Chris Carson pounding forward for 9 yards and that kind of stuff. So it allows the Seahawks to dictate more about what's going to happen. But I think a team will say, hey, well, I'd rather have Chris Carson, get 8 yards than have Wilson have forever on the outside and, hit Metcalf for a 42-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? So I think they're going to go with a lot more nickel and dime against Seattle and try and take that away. And it'll just be up to Chris Carson and Russ to make it work.
So now the key is going to be the mixed play calling and the creativity of Shane Waldron to use the personnel. So you and I have talked about this, and it's kind of become self-evident over a long period of time that we're not maximizing our personnel to the right scheme, right?
Well, that's Schottenheimer to a T.
Well,
right?
and Bevel to some degree. I mean, Bevel did run kind of a West Coast offense when he was here before Schotty, and maybe we just didn't have the personnel then to expand on what we did do, because you always have to match up your personnel to the scheme and all that kind of stuff, right? And it may not be the perfect marriage, but who knows? But now I think you can see the opportunity to match a coordinator and play calling to a personnel that is completely optimal, like the most optimal quarterback that you can envision possibly running this offense with skilled players that are pretty darn good. And then you add like a guy like Eskridge into that equation at a wide receiver with his skill set of getting off the line of scrimmage, with the hand fighting and the physical nature that he has. Even though he's a smaller guy, 6 foot, 195 pounds, he's very physical, knows how to work his hands, swipe, get away, create space almost immediately off the line of scrimmage. Plus, guys don't want to get burned by him too, so there's some cushion there. I'm just excited. I mean, there's a lot of playmaking opportunity in this offense.
I I don't know like what the chances of this happening are, but if they could bring Doug Baldwin in
I
for just
know. I was thinking.
a couple of days in training camp and just here
I was
here
thinking
Doug
what he would be like
go,
in this offense.
here Doug go work with with Eskridge and teach him what you knew and what you did to get off the line of scrimmage, because Eskridge's hands and stuff are good, but Baldwin was so good at what he did with his feet to get away from the press and to create instant space.
Yeah, wait until you see Eskridge, dude. It'll
Only
remind you of Baldwin.
also I've seen like I've gone and watched. He does some great stuff with his hands.
Yes,
but and then he uses his athleticism and speed to kind of run away from
that's
someone.
very true. That is true.
But Baldwin would with the way what he did with his feet, he'd get within the first couple steps, get the cornerback going the wrong direction so that he could instantly have space to work. And he's one of the best ones I've ever seen at what he did. And you pair the two skill sets between what Eskridge does and what Baldwin did, and you might have one of the best press beaters of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, come on, Doug, come on in. Let's see.
When we started this very conversation, the first name that came into my brain was Doug Baldwin.
Oh God,
Doug Baldwin would flourish in this type of an get into open spaces type offense.
Yeah. We like the whole thing last year was let Russ cook. If Doug hadn't had to retire because of his knee injury, man, he would eat in this offense and just set some insane Seahawk records for catches and yards and stuff. Not over the top. He's not that guy. He never was really that guy. But they've got Metcalf for that. But all the stuff that he would get underneath, he might have 130 catches in this offense.
Yeah. I think we'll see some of that, but I think that ends up going to the tight ends a lot in this offense.
It might. I actually think it might end up going to a combination of Eskridge and
Gerald Everett.
No, I was going to say Lockett.
You're sticking with the wide receivers.
Yeah, I honestly think that they're going. You've got two of those guys that can, spread the defense out both laterally and in terms of depth. And then one of those three will take advantage of the space underneath. And yes, Everett's going to be there too, the tight ends. But I do think that, one of the two of the smaller receivers is just going to feast in the offense. And it may be different from week to week, which one, but somebody's going to feast on in this because it just creates space.
Yeah, I was one of my topics, and we just talked about it, was the Lockett extension. And I wrote DK Metcalf, superstar.
Yeah.
Because how can both DK and Lockett take advantage of the tempo and timing of a rhythm attack and getting open, getting the ball in open space? Shane Waldron I think this is where Shane Waldron is going to be at his best, is recognizing the personnel that we have and putting those guys in the optimum situation in this offense.
And that's been my biggest problem with Seattle coaches over the last few years, is they haven't done that.
And that's Pete's tenets of being a coach.
And that's what they did early on in the Pete Carroll era. They looked at, okay, who do we have? What do they do well? And how do we take advantage of that? I mean, the whole moving Red Bryant to defensive end, we had a 330-pound defensive end, was because what did he do well, right? He was outstanding at setting that edge and being that guy. And you just could not run against Seattle when they had Red Bryant out there. He wasn't going to ever rush the passer. He wasn't that good as a defensive tackle on the inside, but they put him over there and suddenly he was a big piece of that defense. Find something that people do and put them in position to do that. And they've really gotten away from that. Especially with Brian Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer was, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to, line up and whatever. And it's, you've got Russ. Why are you dropping him straight back? You don't
over
have
and over again. There's no diversity.
Yeah, you don't have pass blockers on the line, but yet you're asking Wilson to take a 5 or 7 step drop and sit back there forever while you wait for your receivers to get 40 yards downfield. And you do the same thing over and over again. It's like, that's not who your talent is, right? Your talent is, run some play action, get Russ on the edge, and take advantage of the fact that it just really stresses a defense because of his ability to run, and then let him take his shots. But they never did that. And then with Waldron, I mean, they tried to do. They were able to do that with Jared Goff. There were times, like right before Goff got that insane, terrible extension, where he actually looked like a good quarterback. I mean, we know he's not, but now you're going to give that same offense to a quarterback with a real talent like that. I mean, if Waldron can make Jared Goff look good at times, he's going to make Russell Wilson look just godly.
And that's where I wrote down the resurgence of Russell Wilson and the potential MVP, because I think the two, Waldron and Wilson, that pairing is an opportunity for the gold standard in the NFL, because it's going to be an unstoppable offense if it works as advertised. With our existing personnel, you got Chris Carson, the ability to pound the ball. You pair that up with some of the other running backs that we have, and then you add the tight end group that we have. I'm really excited about that group as well. We haven't talked much about them, but I think they will really come into play this year. And then you take a look at our wide receiver group, just the top 3, and then you add whoever else we add to that mix. It's lethal. I mean, there is going to be really no way. So Seattle will have a few options. It'll be able to run the ball on you. It'll be able to methodically march down the field on you with short tempo plays all the way down the field if they need to. If you've got 7 defensive backs on the field and you're taking everything deep over the top away from you, Seattle's going to punish you underneath. It just is. And we'll take those yards, pound, 5-6 yards at a chunk, and we'll march all the way down the field on you. And the element that the Rams never had is the long ball.
Yeah.
Russ is the best in the business at getting the ball down the field in a tight window, and Seattle's like completely optimized to take advantage of that skill set. And so Shane blending all that together, it's impossible to stop it. Only Seattle can stop it.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement on that. Seattle's combination of talent and finally having a coaching staff that's going to build a scheme to match the talent. And in reality, they've been acquiring talent that matches a scheme they didn't have until now. I'm excited. I think that the whole offense is going to take off and be great. And my concern is the same thing it always is. It's, we don't let, is the depth there so that an injury or two doesn't just completely derail things.
Where are the vulnerabilities in that?
Wide receiver, offensive line, running back, quarterback always. Wait, that would be everything.
Yeah, everything. You're right. That's why Super Bowl teams have very few injuries overall compared to everyone else, and they, balls bounce their direction, once every few games, and so you end up winning 3 more games than the average team. You get to 12 or 13 wins. Those are the differences in the NFL. Everything's so equal.
It comes down to depth a lot, and that was one of the things when, in Seattle's Super Bowl years, it wasn't just that they had the best talent, they had the best roster, because if when certain guys got hurt or had to come off the field, the next guy back was also great, and was able to step in. I mean, when you pulled Chris Clemens off the field, you brought on Cliff Averill, right? So
True.
I mean, there's not a drop off there, right? Brandon Browner got Wally pipped, and by Byron Maxwell. I mean, you pull off one talented player and you bring in another. The depth was insane. This team has the talent, the high end talent, to go out and beat anybody in the league. do they have the depth to continue to do that over a 17-game season and the playoffs? That's the concern.
Which way are you leaning on that answer?
They're right on that edge where it's hard to tell. I like the fact that they got Forsyth and Abuahi at on the offensive line. So I do think they've got some depth there. They've got 3 good tight ends. So if one of them gets hurt, they don't have this massive drop off. I'm a little concerned about the depth at receiver after the top 3, although Freddie Swain deserves to be part of this discussion as well. And nobody has a backup quarterback that's going to come in and win you a Super Bowl. Sorry, that's just not going to happen. But it's close enough that I think they're okay, but it's not a guarantee the same way.
Is Geno Smith in his current form a worse quarterback than Jared Goff in this offense?
Geno Smith hasn't played a meaningful snap in 4 years.
He's a heck of a coin flipper, though. You got to give him credit.
Oh yeah, he flips a coin like the best of them.
So I didn't have anything else on my list. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about? We might end up cutting this show a little short.
Actually, the last thing on my list was the depth, and what does the depth look like, and who steps up? Because if Ethan Postic gets hurt at center, they have nothing. I mean, Kyle Fuller, who looked terrible when he played last year. Now, granted, he missed all of training camp in the first 6 weeks and all of that, and we'll see where he ends up. But there's some depth problems. And the last couple of years, when Lockett's gotten hurt, the offense has stalled. Eskridge is supposed to help with that, but he's also a rookie, and rookie wide receivers don't tend to have the big impact. Mm-hmm. So
I wouldn't imagine he would have a huge impact other than a big play now and again in the first 8 games. Mm-hmm. And then as the year progresses, he gets more comfortable in his routes, gets more integrated into being out on the field more. I think he'll have a larger impact as the season goes on. He's just one of those players where his skill set translates really well to like Shane's offense.
Going back and rewatching a little bit of tape on him, his route tree is really robust compared to most college wide receivers. His ability to create separation over a variety of different routes, it's worth noting, because most college receivers, even the best ones, come in. They've got 4 routes that they run really well, and they've got like 3 others that they're okay at. Whereas Eskridge, his route tree is 8, 9 deep, where he creates separation on almost every snap, and so.
And Shane is going to want to use that weapon. So I would imagine that they spend a considerable amount of time integrating him into certain plays that they run just for him, or certain sets, that he's on the field for an entire series. Just take advantage of some of that.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to have opportunities coming in the slot, and you're going to see where he will be able to get out into space on the outside with the ball in his hands and turn upfield and use that playmaking ability. The Seahawks haven't had a guy who can really do run after the catch craziness since Golden Tate left. Percy Harvin was supposed to be that, but he only lasted 6 games after Golden Tate left. But Eskridge has that ability, and
we may see it early on, kicking punt returns too. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be fun. He'll be fun. But
so next week we are going to be back here talking about the defense. We're going to, we'll talk about what's going on in this week's training camp, get you up to date on everything that's happened during the week, and then we'll talk defense next week. That'll be fun. There's a lot going on that side of the ball. It seems like the offense is kind of almost figured out. We've talked about it, and every time we talk about it, there's really nothing glaring out there, and it's just it's a lot of excitement to kind of see how it all fits together. On the defense, though, last year was half good and half bad. which defense is going to show up this year.
That undersells it. They were historically bad, and then
they were historically bad.
They were legit historically bad statistically in multiple categories for the first like 6 games, and then they got
luckily
a little better.
That coincided with the offense being historically good.
Yep,
that was crazy.
And then down the stretch, that defense came together, and part of it is that a lot of the guys got healthy, and clearly the depth was a problem on defense last year. But when it came together, led the league in sacks over the last 8 games. Top 3 defense in terms of yards and points over the last 8 games. That was a really good defense, and they were so bad early on. People don't recognize just how good that defense was down the stretch. So, and then that's the bigger unknown. You're right. The offense, like, we know that there's talent at every position. It's gonna be fun. But the defense, it's like, what's it going to end up looking? Yeah. You know, we've had all the changeover at corner, and KJ Wright's no longer there. And, you know, what's going to happen at the strong side linebacker, and, you know, who's going to win out on all the pass rushing.
Who's going to be on the field?
Yeah. And, you know, Darrell Taylor's, they got nothing from him last year. He, you know, never played a snap. Blair played half a game last year, and now he's back, and it's just, there's just talent.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch to work with.
But it's a matter of how do they put it together. I mean, there was a point last year where pretty much everyone, including you and I on this show, were saying, you know, Norton's got to go. Like, he's just
8 games in, dude. I was there.
He was, you know, dead men walking.
It was to the point, Keith, where I thought that even the last 8 games wasn't enough to save his job. I think the show right after the season, I was like, you know, something's got to happen there. It's like,
I don't know, but
right?
what happened? But if you look over what happened at the last 8 games when he got the guys healthy,
exactly, Keith,
he turned that into that was a good defense. And you can't just say, you have a lot of talent. Of course, you did the job. His ability to put guys in position, to let Jamal Adams go and break the NFL record for sacks as a safety, but not leave massive holes behind that.
Well, I think the big part of that whole thing was integrating Jamal Adams, you know, because I don't think that Quandre Diggs quite understood that, you know, where Adams was going to be all the time. And I think that created some issues on the back end. And then just not having the right personnel, you know, with Flowers back there and so forth. And then the defensive line was just the weakest link last year early, and became, you know, quite a strength, you know, as the year progressed. But you're right. There's still question marks as far as which starting 4 are going to be out there 60 to 70% of the snaps on that defensive line. Who's going to get those pass rushing reps? Is Darrell Taylor going to come in and be all that? You know, Robinson, Hyder, how does he integrate? Is he out there all the time because he's so diverse? You know, and then the strong side linebacker question, does Alden Smith come in and play? I mean, there's just like questions everywhere. We didn't have any questions on the offense, right? You just got question marks everywhere on the defense. And somehow or another, by the end of training camp, that all needs to be kind of put together into a really nice package.
I had to say that I've never had more faith in Ken Norton Jr. than I do now after the last 8 games, and his ability to take that mess and get it worked out. Now, what we can't have this year is it take 8 games, because all the communication.
Well, they had the accountability meeting, which was the turning point. Why have that meeting 8 games in when you knew it was a problem 4 games in? Yeah,
have that before the season starts.
Yeah, there you go.
Get everyone on the same page before the season starts, so that way you're playing at that level week 1.
Yeah. And I think having, you know, Jamal Adams, we'll talk about his contract situation, I'm sure, next week way more, but having him for a full off season, a full season, a full off season, and back again, I think it's going to be huge for this defense too. Understated huge, because I think he is the emotional leader of this defense. I think he took that over, and Bobby Wagner's the statesman of the defense. And maybe I'm underselling Bobby Wagner a little bit. Maybe he's more than that to the team, but Jamal Adams is the personality of the defense as we go forward.
Yep. the team's got 2 multiple All-Pros, and it's the old guy in Bobby Wagner and the young kid right behind him in Jamal Adams. And honestly, that having 2 guys like that, it's fantastic. The defense has its leaders. Now they need to put it all together. And we'll see what happens.
All right. Hey, why don't you take us out of here today?
Wow. Okay. So follow Bill on Twitter at NW Seahawk. Follow me. I'm Myers at Myers NFL. The show is at Seahawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com. You can find us on any podcast app or streaming service. We're on everything out there now.
Even iHeartRadio.
Yeah, we're on iHeartRadio. So that's it. And so until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.